Mafia romance. Teen texts father for mom's surgery. Mafia sees it. Part 2. The silence in the Villa Conti had shifted. With Alessia's decision to stay, she was no longer a guest or a prisoner. She was an apprentice. Her mother had been given a new identity and money to start her new life. She was too fragile to stay in the dangerous world. The goodbye had been brutal. Isabella, still weak but recovering, had held her daughter's face in trembling hands. "You're different," she'd whispered. "Stronger, but also harder." "I'm alive, Mama, and so are you. That's what matters. Will I see you again?" Alessia had smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "When it's safe, I promise." It was a lie they both needed. The woman who walked away from that seaside villa wasn't the desperate daughter who had sent the wrong text. That girl was gone. In her place was someone who understood that love sometimes meant letting go. Donato proved to be a ruthless teacher. The first week, he handed her a stack of financial ledgers. "Lombardi's shell companies. Find the discrepancies. The money he stole from me is in one of them." She spent 3 days cross-referencing until her eyes burned. When she founded a shipping company in Malta with profits 10 times what they should have been, Donato simply nodded. "Good. Now draft a plan to dissolve it and absorb the assets without alerting the Maltese authorities." This became her new life. Lessons in finance, intimidation, the unspoken language of power. She learned to read the tension in Silas's jaw that meant a visitor was lying. She learned the difference between a bluff and a genuine threat. She also learned about Donato. He was never needlessly cruel. His violence was surgical, applied with precision. He respected intelligence and despised desperation. And he watched her constantly. The first crack in his armor came on a rainy Thursday. Alessia was in the library practicing a disarmament technique on a dummy, her movements clumsy with frustration. "You're thinking too much." She hadn't heard him enter. He crossed the room, making the vast space feel suddenly intimate. "It's not natural," she said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Power never is." At first, he moved behind her, close enough that she felt his heat. His hands closed over hers on the practice knife. "Don't fight the motion. Guide it." He led her through the movement, fluid and twisting, until the dummy's weapon clattered to the floor. "Your opponent's strength is your weapon. Use their momentum." He didn't release her immediately. She was aware of every point of contact, the scent of him, his chest against her back. Her heart pounded. "I understand," she whispered. He stepped back. Again, until it's muscle memory. The second crack was more dramatic. Donato brought her to a meeting with the Morettis to negotiate a territorial dispute. Their underboss, Carlo, looked her up and down with a sneer. "Since when do we bring pets to business meetings, Marchetti?" Alessia kept her face neutral. Donato's voice dropped to deadly calm. "Apologize to Miss Rossi." Carlo laughed. "Or what?" The atmosphere shifted. "The shipment of Sicilian olives you're waiting on? It now belongs to me. Your loan interest just tripled. Apologize, or I will dismantle your empire piece by piece." Carlo's face went pale. "My apologies, Miss Rossi. It was a poor joke." In the car afterward, Alessia spoke. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said, staring out the window. "But you shouldn't have to. Not yet." Weeks became a month. Her mother recovered at a secluded villa, unaware of her daughter's new world. Alessia visited weekly, spinning tales of a prestigious financial internship. The lies tasted bitter, but her mother's health made them worthwhile. One evening, Alessia presented Donato with a complete strategy to neutralize the Moretti family without violence, using their financial vulnerabilities against them. He listened, fingers steepled. When she finished, silence stretched between them. "It's brilliant, ruthless, and elegant." He walked to the window. "When I was 22, I had to kill 3 men to achieve what you just did with a pen and paper." "Times have changed," she said softly. "You have changed them." He turned, raw admiration in his eyes. "You've exceeded every expectation, Alessia." He crossed to her, stopping inches away. The space between them crackled. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "When you came here, you were made of fire and fear," he murmured, thumb tracing her jaw. "Now you're becoming something else entirely. And I find I can no longer pretend to be just your teacher." Her heart hammered. "Then what do you want to be?" He closed the distance, hand cupping the back of her neck, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a claiming, a confession, power acknowledging power. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "I want to be the man who stands beside you," he said, forehead against hers. Alessia smiled. She wasn't his victim, or just his protege. She was his equal. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." The next day, Donato gathered his top lieutenants. When they were seated, he didn't take his place at the head of the table. He pulled out the chair beside it. Alessia, this is your seat. As she sat, meeting the surprised looks of the hardened men around the table, she knew her old life was over. The wrong text hadn't just saved her mother, it had led her to something unexpected. She was no longer Alessia Rossi, the desperate daughter, and she was just getting started. Chapter 2. A month had passed since the kiss. The chair beside Donato at the obsidian table was no longer just a seat. Alessia felt its weight every time she sat down, the weight of the men's gazes, some curious, some resentful, all wary. Their dynamic had evolved. Now his hand would linger on her back as he guided her through security schematics. Now her corrections during strategy sessions were met with slow smiles that promised more than professional approval. The villa had become a fortress they were building together. The first test came from the Greco family, led by the aging patriarch Vittorio. He saw Donato's focus on a woman as weakness. He hijacked a Marchetti shipment of electronics, a blatant act of disrespect. Donato's lieutenants advocated immediate retaliation. We burned 3 of their trucks. Enzo slammed his fist on the table. Donato's eyes found Alessia's. Your assessment? All eyes turned to her. She set down her tablet. Burning trucks is costly and starts a war. Vittorio is old world. His pride is his weakness, not his trucks. And what would you do, little girl? Enzo sneered. I would bankrupt him. She turned the tablet, showing a complex web of holdings. The Greco fortune is in 3 downtown piazzas. He's leveraged to his eyeballs. I've had our lawyers file 100 minor code violations. The fines will cripple his cash flow. Then we run a story about decaying Greco properties, scaring off tenants. Within 6 weeks, the banks foreclose. We buy his empire for pennies. We don't burn his toys, Enzo. We take them and make him watch. Silence. Donato's lips curved into that rare, predatory smile. That is how you send a message in the 21st century. Make it happen. As the men filed out, Donato came to her side. That was exceptionally cruel, he murmured with admiration. You taught me that power is a scalpel, not a club. He leaned close. I find your mastery deeply arousing. That night, the tension finally broke. He came to her room. The door closed, and he was on her, his mouth capturing hers in a kiss that was possession and surrender. It was not gentle exploration, but fierce collision. Clothes were torn. His hands mapped her body with raw hunger, and she met him with equal intensity. It was their partnership made physical, violent, all-consuming, utterly equal. The next weeks were a whirlwind. By day, she executed her plan against the Grecos. By night, she shared Donato's bed. She was learning the most important lesson. In their world, love and power were the same beast, and they were feeding it together. Vittorio Greco, desperate and enraged, made one final mistake. He sent 2 men to kidnap Alessia. They struck as she walked to the guest wing. 2 figures emerged from shadows. She didn't freeze. As one lunged, she used his momentum, executing the disarmament move with precision. The knife clattered to stone. The second man grabbed her from behind, but a gunshot echoed. The man crumpled. Donato stood 10 feet away, gun smoke curling, his face cold fury. The first man tried to run. Donato shot him in the leg. He was at her side instantly, hands gripping her arms. Are you hurt? I'm fine, she said, voice steady despite her thundering heart. His gaze fell to the knife, then back to her. The fury morphed into something odd. He pulled her to him, kissing her hard, right there in the courtyard under moonlight. No one touches what is mine, he growled. Later, in his office, he took a small black handgun from a locked drawer. This is for you. Not a symbol. A tool. The final lesson. He taught her to load it, hold it, sight down the barrel. His arms were around her, chest to her back. Power is not just in the mind, Alessia, he whispered. Sometimes it's in the trigger. I trust you with mine. Now trust yourself with yours. She felt the weight in her palm. She looked at Donato, partner, teacher, lover. The desperate girl was a distant memory. In her place was a woman who could bankrupt an empire or defend her life with equal ease. She was no longer just standing beside him. She was ruling with him. Chapter 3. The attempted kidnapping sent shockwaves through the underworld. Vittorio Greco was broken, his assets dissolved, his name a joke. But the power vacuum was dangerous. A new player emerged, the Commissione, a shadowy council of bankers, politicians, and judges who saw the old families as messy, anachronistic threats. They saw Donato as the biggest relic of all, and Alessia as his vulnerability. Their first move was subtle. A key councilman refused calls. A lucrative contract was mysteriously awarded elsewhere. Donato's usual pressure tactics didn't work. The councilman had been offered immunity by the commissioner. An investigative journalist began digging into Villa Conti. "They're not men you can threaten," Alessia said, watching him pace. "They have no territory, no soldiers. Their empire is paper and secrets." "Then what do you suggest?" "We don't fight them. We join them." She pulled up a file. "Commissioner member Armani. His daughter is getting married next week at Villa d'Este. We're going. To crash the wedding? To show them I'm not your vulnerability. I'm your sharpest weapon." The week was preparation. Alessia chose a blood-red silk gown armor, not decoration. She memorized the vulnerabilities of every key attendee through her network of private investigators. When they arrived, whispers began immediately. She ignored them, moving through the crowd with predator's grace. She complimented a judge's wife on her necklace, then mentioned the judge's illegal poker habit. The woman's smile froze. She discussed interest rates with a banker, then wondered aloud about his Cayman accounts. He went pale. She wasn't threatening. She was displaying intelligence, showing every powerful person that she saw their secrets. Donato watched, profound pride swelling in his chest. He saw fear and respect in eyes that had dismissed him as a thug. Commissioner Armani approached. "Marchetti, a fascinating +1. Alessia slid her hand through Donato's arm. "Commissioner, a beautiful wedding. It reminds me of the importance of legacy, building something that lasts, something worth protecting from messy, inconvenient truths. Don't you agree?" Armani stared at her, composure cracking. He saw not a girl, but an equal, a dangerous one. He gave a curt nod. "Your methods have evolved. We will be in touch." Surrender. They barely made it inside the villa before he had her against the door, mouth crashing down on hers. Different from before, slower, deeper, claiming and worship combined. "What you did tonight," he breathed. "You were magnificent." He carried her to his bedroom. The intimacy that followed was a wordless conversation. His hands that taught her to hold a knife now traced her body with awe. Her lips that spoke financial ruin now whispered his name like a prayer. When climax came, it felt less like release and more like a vow. Afterward, wrapped together, he spoke into darkness. "I've spent my life building walls, creating a fortress of fear. I thought it was strength." He turned her face to his. "You've shown me the greatest power isn't keeping people out. It's letting one person all the way in." Tears stung her eyes. She kissed him, pouring her answer into the touch. The next morning, an envelope arrived by courier. An invitation for Donato and Alessia Marchetti to attend the Commissioner's annual summit. He handed it to her. She looked from the card to him, the man who had seen the weapon in her soul, and sharpened it rather than feared it. "Well," she said, a confident smile spreading. "It seems we're finally getting a seat at the right table. Number. Chapter 4. The summit invitation was a blade delivered with a smile. A test to see if they could be broken. The morning of the summit, Alessia wore black, a severe pantsuit that was uniform and declaration, not decoration for his arm. She was there to work. Donato's hand settled on her shoulders as she looked in the mirror. "They'll try to humiliate you, make you feel like a novelty. I am an outsider. That's my advantage. They don't know my rules. And what are your rules today?" "Today," she said, "we make them so afraid of what we know that they forget to be offended by who we are." The summit was held in a sterile Milan conference center. Gray-haired men in boring suits, firm handshakes, dead eyes. Chairman Moretti spoke of market stability, regulatory alignment, civilized conduct. His contempt for Donato was barely concealed. When Donato spoke on territorial revenue, they talked over him, dismissive tones making clear he was a dinosaur. Alessia watched. This was their game, not direct challenge, but slow, suffocating dismissal. She saw frustration flicker in Donato's jaw. Then Moretti made his mistake. He turned his condescending smile on her. Perhaps the young lady would care to comment? It must be so stimulating to be in such consequential discourse. Silence. All eyes on her, waiting for her to flounder. Alessia placed her palms flat on the table and leaned forward. Consequential? Is that what you call embezzling €200 million from the European Infrastructure Fund through Ethelgard Holdings? She paused. The one you funnel through your brother-in-law's Luxembourg bank? The one whose records are currently being examined by a journalist I finance. Moretti's face went blotchy red. How dare? I dare, because while you played golf and signed meaningless accords, I was reading. I know about the child you keep hidden in Switzerland. Commissioner Valerio. I know about the cocaine habit your head of security funds by selling your protection details, Senator Borelli. She stood slowly, sweeping her gaze around the table. You invited us to see if we were civilized. Let me be clear. We are not. We are effective. Donato's strength is that he knows what he is. Your weakness is you've forgotten. You pretend to be bankers and politicians. But you're thieves and predators, just like him. The only difference is, he's better at it. She picked up her tablet. The old world is a ghost that doesn't know it's dead. We are the future. You can join the empire we're building, or be a footnote in its history. Choose quickly. My patience, unlike my research, has limits. She walked out, the click of her heels the only sound. Donato found her outside by their car. He pulled her into his arms, fierce and absolute. He kissed her hair, her temple, finally her lips, a kiss that tasted of victory. You, he breathed. I have never. No one has ever. They will never disrespect you again. It's not about me. It hasn't been for a long time. You weren't just protecting my honor. You were claiming your throne. As the driver pulled away, he took her hand. There is a property, a castle in Tuscany, high walls, fertile land, 1,000 years of history, a place to build a legacy, not just an empire, a family. He looked at her, his gray eyes clear and certain. I want to build it with you. Alessia looked at their joined hands, at the man who had seen the weapon in her soul and sharpened it rather than feared it. He was offering her everything, not just power, but a home, a future. She brought his knuckles to her lips and kissed them. Then let's go home, she said. As the car wound through the hills toward Tuscany, the city lights fading behind them, Alessia realized the wrong text hadn't been wrong at all. It had been the first right thing in a lifetime of survival. It had led her not just to power, but to partnership. Not just to safety, but to a man who saw her, all of her, and chose to stand beside her rather than above her. The Villa Conti was behind them now. The commissione, the old families, the world of shadows and blood, all of it receding like a bad dream. Ahead lay ancient stones, warmed by Tuscan sun, terraced gardens, and 1,000 years of history waiting to become theirs. Ahead lay home. And that's where we leave them, heading toward Tuscany and a future they built together. Thank you for following Alessia and Donato's journey from that first desperate text to this final chapter. If you loved this story, consider subscribing to support more content like this. What kind of stories do you want to hear next? Romance? Thriller? Let us know below.